Hiya, my name's Lauren. I'm just going to be taking you through the practice exam question for Edexcel GCSE English Language paper number 1, and we're going to be looking at Persuasion by Jane Austen. So the question begins by saying that you've read the following extract, so we're going to assume that you've already done that, and we'll go straight on into the questions. Okay, so as you can see, we've got 4 questions that we're going to be looking at today, and they all vary in marks. So the first 2 questions have only got 1 or 2, which means you should only spend a few minutes at best at them. And then question 3 has 6 marks, and question 4 has 15. So it's really important that you're spending the kind of right amount of time on each of the questions. I'd recommend spending a lot longer on the 15-mark question, perhaps even starting with that before going on to the ones that are a little bit smaller. So for question 1, as we can see, it says to start off in lines 1 to 12 and identify a phrase that tells you Louisa could be badly injured. And this is for just 1 mark, remember. So what's really important in this kind of section is that you do it as quickly as possible, and this can be done by using skim reading. So rather than reading every kind of word that is in the text, you're just skimming across for some words that you can pull out that will kind of give you an idea of what you need to be kind of looking out for. And so as you can see by lines 10 to 12, there are a few sections in there that we could potentially use for this question. And again, it'd just be something that could be badly injured. There's a few things that says she fell on the floor, eyes were closed, she breathed not, her face was like death. So there's a number of different things that we can use for that. Okay, so question 2 reads lines 13 to 20, give 2 short quotations that convey Captain Wentworth's distress, and this one is for 2 marks. And essentially it's the same question as the one before, except we're doing 2 short quotations rather than just the one, which is obviously why it's more marks. So again, we're just going to be using the skim reading technique and go through the language, see if there's anything that we can pull out that we can add in. And again, just remember it needs to be 2. I'd recommend looking in the top section and also in the last kind of 2 lines where there'll be a few suggestions. Okay, so for question 3 it reads, lines 21 to 34, how does the writer use language and structure to show that Anne takes charge of the situation? Support your points with detailed reference to the text. Okay, so we're going to be looking at this one section here, and it's 6 marks obviously. So when you're answering the question, it's going to be a little bit different to the previous questions we've been looking at. It's not just asking for quotes, it's asking for some analysis. We're supporting our points with detailed reference to the text. And so I think probably a good structure for setting out this question is to address both language and structure as almost separate paragraphs. So 3 marks for language and 3 marks for structure. So I'll talk you through how we're going to do that on both sides. So for instance, when we're looking at language, that normally suggests the language that Anne is actually talking about. So what language is Anne and the characters around her using to show that she's taking charge of the situation. So we can see that in the first line, for example, where Anne says, go to him, cried Anne, for heaven's sake, go to him. So she's using really direct language and direct speech. She's not just kind of asking them kindly or asking them quite gently. She's being very direct and very confrontational almost, and telling them exactly what they need to be doing. And this is also bolstered by the fact that she's using repetitive language. She's not just saying go to him once, she's saying it 3 times. So it could be your quotation, and then you could also use what you need to do to be able to make sure that you get the rest of your marks is by saying use your quotation, and then also use how is go to him significant in the text. How does it change the kind of atmosphere of the text? Why is it important? How does it relate back to the source? All of those are kind of analysis that you need to be doing to make sure you're getting all the marks. Then when we're talking about structure, that kind of relates back to the third person narrative. So what is the narrator saying that shows you that Anne is actually taking charge? Or is that not the case? Is Anne not taking charge in this situation? I think from this section we can all agree that Anne clearly is taking charge, and she is the one that's telling everybody what to do. But also not only is she telling people what to do, that they're listening to her. And in lines 24 it says Captain Benwick obeyed. And that could be your quotation that you are using, and then you need to kind of unravel that. Why is that significant? Could it be something that perhaps that Captain Benwick is a male, clearly of a rank, whereas Anne is just Anne, she's a young woman. So does that have any significance of how she's taking charge, that people older than her, people that are kind of superior than her are taking the lead in that environment? Okay, so question 4 reads, how effectively does the writer build up tension in this whole extract? Support your views with detailed reference to the text, and this is 15 marks. And so what I've done is I've just added lines 35 to 42, just in case you didn't have the text to hand, but it's really important to remember that this is not the kind of section that you just need to be looking at, you need to be looking at the whole thing. And so I just wanted to start off by saying that the question begins by saying how effectively. And this is really key to your answer because it's asking for a judgment. It's actually asking you to say, is the writer doing this effectively or is it not? To what degree is it effective? To what degree is it not effective? And it's really important that you get that judgment in there because otherwise you won't be answering the question fully. And it's actually something that you can really easily achieve in the first sentence. And you can do this by just literally rewording the title by saying, the writer effectively builds up tension in this extract by, and then you're able to go on into your kind of like actual essay question answer even. And so one of the things that we need to be looking at is how they build up tension in this whole extract. So clearly there's some sort of change, as we know, that happens in the text that means that the atmosphere, the tension, the environment changes and shifts through the extract. And so I think an easy way to kind of structure this essay would be to have a beginning, middle and an end. So what is the tension like at the beginning of the section? How does the writer achieve this? What effect does it have on the actual text? And that could be your first section. And I would recommend about 3 or 4 marks perhaps on that initial first section and using the first few lines of the text to answer that. And then going on into the second section, that can be talking about how the atmosphere changes. What happens in the text that means that the atmosphere begins to shift? So obviously that's when the girl falls. That's when the whole environment changes and people start to get quite stressed and quite anxious. So, but like, what are the quotation marks that tell you that tell the examiner that you know that the shift has changed and it has occurred? And so obviously it doesn't just end when she falls. The next few sections all talk about how all the people around her are starting to get quite frustrated, very sad, very anxious, quite hysterical. So what are the quotations that you could use to show that those emotions have changed? And what does the language say, not just quotations from the speech, but also what is the narrator telling you about that text in that moment? And how does that change that prolonged atmosphere? And that's the way that you can, I think that's a really easy way to answer this question. You're setting it out with your judgment, you're setting it out with your opinion, and then you're going into a very structured response of saying, this is what happened at the beginning, this is what happened in the middle, and this is what happened at the end. And through that technique, you can show the examiner that you know how the writer built up tension throughout the whole extract. You're answering all points of the essay, of the essay question, but you're also making sure that you're filling your text with lots of references from different parts of the essay.